Last Sunday we started reading the book of Leviticus, and in last Sunday's sermons we knew and believe that God is calling us to this place of worship all the time, and we are not acceptable as we are, so we need to purify, and we need to make ourselves clean so that we may be acceptable to the worship of the Lord. The most important thing is God is calling us to this moment of worship and to the place of worship all the time, and we are invited to the worship. Today, you just heard that we are, you just heard of the one of the 5 major sacrifices. So have you ever heard of these passages, or just have you ever read this portion? Okay, good to know about it. And so it's about burnt offering. There are 5 major offerings in this book, and this is the first one. It's a burnt offering. And so all the sacrifices, the animals, and it is not just like put the animals on the fire directly. That needs to be cleaned and cut into pieces and skin off. And then we need to wash the internal organs and everything. So it's a kind of meat factory. And then after making all those things ready, and then put all those pieces on the fire. And I'd like to show how the tabernacle is structured. Would you please show the next slide? As you see this, and with this, and I'm gonna, we're gonna reflecting on some more passages from this book for the coming Sundays. So you may like to know about how it is structured. So as you see, the top part is north side, and the right side is the east. And when you come into entrance curtain, then in the middle you see the altar. It's bronze, and it's a huge and big one. And then right next to it there's the basin, and that's where you wash the pieces. And that's the court of the tabernacle. And right underneath the southbound, there's a table, and that table was used for the communion after the sacrifice. And for burnt offerings, you burn almost all parts of the animal, so there's nothing left to eat. But for the other offerings, you may have some pieces left for yourselves. You are not to burn all of them, especially peace offering, for example. Then you offer some pieces to the Lord, and for the others you eat between the priest and those who came to sacrifice. So that's a kind of a feast table on the southbound. And then north side of the altar, there's so many tables, and that's where you slaughter the animals and skin off and cut it into pieces. And that's exactly half of the whole tabernacle. The left half is for the holy place, and then within the far west side, that's the Holy of the Holies. And the ark the ark is placed in that Holy of Holies. And in the holy place, you have the table of incense, and then the northern part, there's a table of showbread, and the south side, and there's a lampstand. It's simple. Like, this is the basic structure of tabernacle. Would you please show the next slide? And then you can see some things. Gate, altar, and the water basin. And these are the slaughtering table, and the table of feast over there. And then tent. It's in lampstand and the table of showbread and everything in the holy place. And the far back side, that's the Holy of the Holies, and there's an ark in that place. And that place, the Holy of the Holies, that is not a place where you can enter into that place. No one except for the high priest can enter that place. And even for a high priest, it is not allowed to enter the Holy of the Holies every day at any moment. Just only once a year. He was allowed to enter into that Holy of the Holies. Okay, then when people come in with their sacrifice animals through the entrance curtain, then what they are expected to do is put their hands on the animal, and there are some more things that needs to be done. Before going into it in detail, what was your kind of an idea about how to offer the animals in this sacrifice? And who was the main person in this worship or sacrifice moment? And mine was the priest. The priest was the main figure in this moment, and he did it all. Slaughter and skin off, a cut, and everything. And I just assumed that was the duty and responsibility of the priest, but it is not. Let us just go into this. Everything goes in detail. Of course, there are some responsibilities of a priest as well. Then I'm going to go into verse 3. And actually, today's text consists of 3 major sections. And the first section is how to offer an ox. If it is an ox, then do this. And the second section is almost the same, but that animal that is being offered to God is a sheep or a goat. That's the only difference. And the last section is when you offer birds, then you need to do this and this. So the major theme is the same. So let us go to the first one. If the offering is a burnt offering from the herd, if it's an ox, you are to offer a male, so it's an ox without defect. You must present it, you worshiper, the one who came with the animal to offer and to sacrifice it to the Lord. You must present it at the entrance of the tent of the meeting so that it will be acceptable to the Lord. And you are to lay your hand on the head of the burnt offering. You, the one who came with the animal, not priest. You lay your hand on the head of the burnt offering. and it will be accepted on your behalf to make atonement for you. And you are to slaughter the young bull before the Lord. Still, slaughtering is not the priest's responsibility, but the responsibility of the worshiper. And then the Aaron's, once you slaughter the young bull, then Aaron's sons, the priests, shall bring the blood and splash it against the sides of the altar at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Now we find the first responsibility of priest. Once the worshiper slaughtered the animal, then priest came and then get the blood from that animal, and then splash it all four sides of the altar. According to Jewish tradition, there's a kind of a red line in the middle on each four sides. Then, if it is from a bull or from a sheep or a goat, and there's a lot of blood, and so it should be gathered in a big bowl. And then the priest bring it and then splash it, the red line and the ground midst in that area, just not sprinkling. It is more like a splitting from the bowl for each side, and that's priest's responsibility. And then you are to skin the burnt offering and cut it into pieces. Again, worshippers are expected to skin off and cut it into pieces, not priests again. The sons of the sons of Aaron, the priest, are to put fire on the altar and arrange wood on the fire. Now we find another responsibility of a priest. Priests are expected to arrange the pieces. The worshippers skin off and cut it into pieces and gave it to the priest, and priest take them and then put them on the altar, and the priest arrange it. And then also the priest is to take care of the fire. Then once it is done, and Aaron's sons, the priests, shall arrange the pieces, including the head and the fat, on the wood that is burning on the altar. So when they burn the animal, that includes the head and all the fat as well, all of them, but not the skin itself, the latter, that will belong to the priest. And then you are to wash the internal organs and the legs with water. Again, worshippers are expected to wash the internal organs and the legs. And then the priest is to burn all of it on the altar. So then, just so you can imagine that what the priest is doing is to take care of the fire and put some wood on it so that it may continue to burn. And then their responsibility to take bring the blood and splash it near the altar, and then grab all the pieces of the animal and then put them and then arrange on the altar and burn them all. That's it. Then probably the major job of slaughtering, skinning off, and cutting and washing, they are the major work in this case. But that was done not by the priest, but by the worshippers. And then let us just imagine what's going on here. Do you find, the color of the clothes most of the people are wearing? What color? Do you see? What's the color? Do you see? White. White. Okay. They are in white. And now they are slaughtering. And this kind of all this kind of work is being done in a factory these days. So we call it a kind of a process of the meat, right? There's some work in there. And this, even with the modern technology and all the machine, with the help of machine, it's a little bit easier than the past, but it is still a very, very tough job, right? And that's what they were expected to do. Just imagine how long it took. Even for taking care of a fish, it takes a lot of time. But if it's a sheep or a goat, it takes, I think, a few hours. It's hours work. It's not a minute's work. And if it is a bull, then it may take it in a day or something. So it is not a quick thing at all. It takes a lot of time and energy. And let's just imagine priests do all this work. And it's gonna be the most toughest work in the world. The priests are not doing the whole work. They just need to take care of the fire and just splash the blood and arrange the pieces and burn them all. That was their responsibilities. So in this process, priests was required. In all these sacrifices were not allowed to be done without priests. So priests should be one of the essential parts of the service. But that does not necessarily mean that priest is the main figure alone, the only figure in this sacrifice or in the worship. Rather, the worshipers themselves, they were the main figures in this worship practice. And let's just continue to imagine. They come through the entrance curtain with the animal on the lash, maybe, and they are all in white robe. And once they get inside, and what they do is to lay their hand on the animal, on the head, and then slaughter the animal. Now, just imagine you are now going into the tent, and around the table you just lay your hand on it, and then you slaughter it. That's not what I like to do. What do you see in your imagination? All the blood, right? And the smoke. And you may see the fear that was on the face of the animal. And what do you hear? The screaming of the animal, right? And all bloody in your hands and on your clothes. And the priest, gather the blood in the bowl and splash it here and there. And what do you smell? Smell of the animal. And the smell of the internal organs, that's awful. That's awful. And the smell of the blood. And once it is being burnt, then all the burnt smell. And if you just cook meat on the grill, and it's a good smell because it's perfect and appropriate for our eating. But in this kind of offering, I don't think it's a good thing to smell, because it's a whole offering. It's a burnt offering, so you burn it completely. So eventually I ended up with the smoke in all black suit. That is it. And again, it takes so long time. So you are covered with blood and you are covered with sweat and you are just exhausted. It's a kind of terrible thing that you experience, and if it happens as described in this book, right on the lawn somewhere, then people will be starting to scream. It's a terrible thing to see. And what does this mean to us these days? Then we do not practice this kind of animal sacrifice anymore. But what does this mean? We are called as worshipers, and we are a worshiping community. That's why we are here today at this very moment. Every Sunday at a specific time, we gather together to worship. And the worship for the people of Israel 2025, around 2,000 years ago, they still were offering this kind of sacrifices at the temple in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. And they had been doing and practicing it for hundreds of years. And that was the worship practice for them. And that was their worship experience. So now let us compare their worship practice and experience with the modern day, today's practice. To us, worship service is not a terrible thing like that, right? Because we don't do it anymore. Thank God for that. We just come into the sanctuary and we have an altar. I'm happy that I do not have to, splash the blood around the altar. It's a comfortable place here. We sit on the table, on the pews. on the chair or pews. And we have fine systems and devices that help our worship experience. So what we see is normal. It's beautiful. And what we hear is beautiful sound and beautiful music. Choir singing, hymn singing. And we don't have to even shed sweat. And there is no blood in this sanctuary. So we find the big difference between the worship practice in the past and the worship practice of today. So, to us who are modern-day Christians, our worship experience is not a terrible thing like that, but it is more like a pleasant thing to do. But what I like to say is that to us, worship service is something like to attend or to see or to listen to or to watch. Right? Our worship experience is something like that. But in the past, their worship experience is not just listen or watch. It is more like a worship experience for them was to do something. It's an action. Worship is an act. They slaughter and skin off and cut and wash the organs. Worship was an action for them. But today we just attend the worship service and we watch the service. And especially that is true, especially when once we were going into this COVID-19 season. And then because now we can participate in the service online. So that is more like just watching. Like we watch TV shows and other films and other events. Worship service is not an event. It was an action. It is not something that we watch or observe, giving some grace that, okay, I'm going to give 7 to Pastor Shin's sermon today. And I may like to, a good grade to the choir singing today. Today, modern day worshipers are a little bit away, away from what we do as worshipers. Modern day worshipers are more like watchers or observers. But worship service is something that we need to go into, and we really need to participate in the worship service. It's not the priest's job alone, which means it's not Pastor Shin's job alone. And the worship is not the responsibility of worship committee members or worship team members. And worship is something that priests and the worshipers did together, and mostly by the worshipers. In the same way, this worship experience should be something like that. We need to be more actively engaged in the act of worship service. So then, how can you be a part of the worship service? And that is a question that we'd like to think about. You and me and all of us may like to think about it, so that we can make sure that we are all worshipers. And as we just shared from Psalm reading, then that was, our worship is rather than watching, but it is about to give ourselves in this awful and terrible action. Why we killed the innocent animals? Because of our sins and of our wrongdoings. That needs to be atoned. So when they were slaughtering the animals, it was like that they were killing themselves. So it is not a pleasant thing at all, and it is not an easy work to do. It is a very tough job. And because it is about our killing ourselves. And as we read together in Psalm reading today, you have no delight in sacrifice. Were I to give a burnt offering, you would not be pleased. The sacrifice acceptable to God is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. While imagining what the worshippers in the past were slaughtering and splashing blood and everything, then that is something that we do in our worship experience. Which means then we come to God with a broken heart and broken spirit. And we are giving ourselves as living sacrifice to God. And that's what God is looking for in our worship experience. So when we come before the Lord with a broken heart and contrite heart, and that's what God is looking for. So come with all those things, and let us be active parts of the service. And we don't have to sacrifice animals, but there are so many things that we can contribute to our worship moments. So let us just think about that. And then if there's anything that you'd like to volunteer, I'd love to include that. So let us work on that together. Let us offer the worship service of our own based on the scripture. Then that will be acceptable to God. Amen. As I shared with many of you, Doris has gone into eternal rest last Sunday, and we had a very good conversation about her with a picture taken just the day before after the service last Sunday. And I got a call from Marilyn that afternoon, and she passed away. And she was not feeling so well on Sunday, and she started vomiting, and then realized that it's not. She needs to see a doctor. But when she was admitted, and she passed away already, and so it was so quick, and she didn't suffer too long or too much, and that's I'm thankful to God for. But we lost our loved ones, but it may be a gaining for those who have gone before us, including Wayne and Suzanne, and they may be enjoying their reunions. And we know and believe that we will be reunited once we take off our physical bodies as well. And so may God grant peace and comfort to all the surviving family members and to us all, because it's a big loss in our community as well.